Welcome to Code to Cloud. And on today's episode, we are joined by the amazing Kat Morgan from Pulumi. How's it going, Kat?
Hey, Kevin. It's good. I think we have fun stuff planned today.
That's right.
And so we're just gonna dive in and code until we run out of time. See how far we get.
Let's see how far we get. I mean, Kat teased what we were going to do this week, right? She had more of a plan than I did, right? I was like, I want to know more about Pulumi and how it works. She was like, whoa. Let's get some sort of plan together, right? So we look at Pulumi on Azure, right?
Yeah. So kind of what I had in mind. AI is all the rage, right? But I mean, I'm hearing murmurs. And I feel like we need to start getting prepared for when people are ready for it.
Exactly.
No. Okay, so but at the same time, we're infrastructure people, at least I am. I think you are.
Yes.
So we're going to play in Kubernetes land and GitOps land. If that sounds good to you.
For sure.
We will kind of just roll out little enhancements to kind of start from scratch and build a GitOps repo. And between now and next time, hopefully we will have some AI doing magical stuff on Kubernetes with Carpenter for scaling node groups with GPUs and all kinds of fun VLLM stuff. Maybe try out, who knows, when is the Llama 3 model dropping? If we cut both episodes before Llama 3 drops, then people will be able to just pick it up and swap out Llama 2 for Llama 3 and give it a try too.
That sounds awesome. Now, I just want to go back to ground zero, right? Let's start off with, mention GitOps, Kubernetes there, but what is Pulumi? What does it do?
Pulumi, for starters, gives all of the employees a really cool Lego toy. And I haven't made it to my 1 year yet, so my Lego guy is on the ground floor and really sad.
That's awesome.
But Pulumi is an infrastructure as code company. So we operate in the same space as, say, CloudFormations, Bicep, Terraform. Some people throw out Ansible Puppet, and that wouldn't be quite accurate because as we go through it, we'll talk about some of the differences between imperative automation and declarative automation.
Okay.
In case we have viewers who want to kind of break down those differences. But we are very much infrastructure as code. A lot of people use the IAC moniker for infrastructure as code. And then they write stuff in a DSL, a domain-specific language, or they use YAML or something like that. And with Pulumi, we offer a YAML option for writing your IAC, but you can also write your infrastructure as code in any typical programming language. We have most of the popular ones covered, including Python, Golang, TypeScript, Java. We have some .NET and C# people out there. Don't ask me to do those ones.
Don't worry.
Will fumble everything. So
I just want to ask some questions if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Does Pulumi have its own configuration language? You mentioned that it uses a couple there, right, to interface, right, with an API, I take it. But does it have its own configuration language out of the box, or is it just turn up with your own version of ice cream and we'll put the toppings on top, right? How does it work?
Yeah, so our IAC is reliant on the Pulumi binary installed locally for the entry-level adoption journey.
Okay.
There's another option that's a programmatic API that's hosted, and you can call that API instead of a CLI if you want to write more advanced logic controllers around your IAC. We're not going to get into that probably in this project, but it's helpful to know it's out there just to understand Pulumi as an ecosystem instead of just a single tool. But for our use case, we're going to be writing, I've chose Python because I've been writing a lot of that, and it's common in the AI world right now. So we're going to be using Python as our infrastructure as code language. We're going to use the Pulumi CLI to actually execute that IAC program. We call them programs. And then as far as any configuration goes, per stack and per project configuration is all written in just a pretty simple YAML syntax. There's a couple of details of the syntax that will be kind of interesting to get into. But it's fairly rudimentary to pick up, and there's not a ton of configuration to cover outside of the infrastructure as code itself.
Awesome. Well, I'll let you kick off then, right? And let's get this train moving.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going
to
have to share and unshare and share different stuff to kind of bounce around.
The sun has come out
today.
But
let me get my browser set up first. And then you can kind of help me figure out if I need to zoom in more or not.
No problem.
So, share screen. Find the right window. I have way too many open. I should just open another tab. That's how I can find what I'm looking for. All right, so to start off, I need to create a new GitHub repo for our project. I'm going to go to the dev container. It's a template repo.
Okay.
So you can use GitHub CLI, or you can even use VS Code, but I'm just going to follow through this in the GUI for now. Actually, I need to zoom in just a tad.
That's okay.
Is that comfortable?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Cool. All right, so I'm going to do create a new repository and jump in here. We're going to call it, I don't think I have, yes. All right, cool.
It's available.
I can just be like, haha, yeah, no. Should we do AKS or AI? Ooh, we'll do, see, I'm totally like taking the naming way too seriously.
Yes. This is great that we're going through the process, right? Like,
yeah,
a lot of people in our field skim over all this, and then you just go straight into the code, and then there's people at home that are like, how did you get to that stage, right? So it's good that we're going over this.
Yeah, I hope that it's not too much TDM and minutia, but I really want this to kind of be friendly for people. So first off, with an empathy statement a little bit, picking up a programming language, if you're an infrastructure person and you're not like already on board with programming in Python or Golang or something like that, it can be kind of a daunting challenge, right?
I've been there. I've been there personally, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so I know that picking up some of the other IAC tools can be tempting just because there's a seemingly less complex like YAML or domain specific language DSL like HCL, HashiCorp language. Like they have fewer things that you can do wrong, which is a little bit reassuring sometimes if you're trying to learn something new. But realistically, you end up having to learn many advanced ways of using those DSLs without being able to just use typical problem-solving skills common in regular programming languages. And so that is its own stressor once you actually get more advanced in your production deployments and things like that. So and I would say it's probably an easier hello world type tool to pick up if you're using one of those others. But if you really want it to grow with your business complexity and keep pace and enable you to deliver faster, we're all about that real programming language benefit.
No, I completely agree. I've seen it where people have made Terraform do things that it wasn't designed to do, right? And I'm like, why?
Yeah, you can push it really hard, or you can like bolt a bunch of different tools together.
Exactly,
like I was on a big DoD project for a long time, and we were, building Terraform, and we're like, okay, we need more logic. So we wrapped it in Ansible, and then we had our Terraform split into 3 different parts. And then there was like chaining all the inputs and outputs and using Ansible to go get values from different APIs or a configuration file. And then that had too many dependencies because you had to have the right Ansible modules installed and the right Terraform modules installed. And we were working in an air gap. And well, we actually needed a container to wrap all of that. And then we had to write an entry point that could actually feed the YAML file to Ansible so that it could create the, the Jinja template Terraform variables file, and then it would execute the Terraform in the right order, and then try to check to make sure the infrastructure is ready to execute the next Terraform. Anyway, yeah, you can do all that and accomplish what you need, but or we can just use one tool. So that's what we're going to do today.
Okay.
All right, so what I just did, I went to the Pulumi dev container repo, and I created a new repo from that template. There's some things in here that we won't end up needing. Like this makefile has a bunch of example targets in it for doing weird things like setting up kind Kubernetes. But it also has like basic activities like, Pulumi login with some extra stuff. And most importantly for me, the dev container. So this dev container brings in all of our dependencies. So we have Pulumi CLI, we have Pulumi ESC, which is our environment secrets and configuration tool so that you can safely handle secrets and stuff like that. I usually keep, if I have a kube config, I usually keep my kube config in Pulumi ESC as well. So I don't actually have to keep track of protecting that file or making sure not to leak it or weird things like that. We'll probably get into that. But so there is a GitHub action in here. We'll probably have to rip that out and replace it with a different GitHub action, but the template will be a great skeleton for us. And to move forward, we're going to go ahead and open this in GitHub Codespaces. So GitHub Codespaces allows you to have a developer environment in an Azure VM. That can be really helpful if, say, you have an M1 laptop locally and maybe not all of your dependencies are ARM. Or if, I use two systems. I have my desk system and then I have my Road Warrior laptop. And by doing my projects in Codespaces, like I don't have to worry, did I clone the Git? Did I push, code to Git? Did I make sure that I have everything I need before I hit the road? So like I can just pick up wherever I left off and my Codespaces has everything that I need there. So I use this a lot. But I also use dev containers locally. Let's see, we're going to do the default. There are other dev containers you can choose. We're probably going to actually have to add one for Azure to drop in the Azure CLI. I don't have that one yet, so we'll make that one. It'll be a fun way to see kind of how to extend the dev container. So that's going to take a minute to build. So if we want to actually explore some of the things that we're going to add to our repository. What did I actually call it? Azure AI? Probably.
I think it's just Azure AI, right?
Yeah, I just got it backwards. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at what's in here while the, holy cow, that went fast. Do I have a dev container? No, I don't.
It's still spinning it up.
No, it didn't give me the container. That's weird. Let's do. So normally it picks up, I probably selected the wrong. All right, let's do this. Create new.
Loving code spaces, by the way.
Yeah, I am disappointed. Okay, I'm actually going to destroy this code spaces and we will
Start again,
launch
right?
it again. So that actually lets us, drop into code spaces management. We're going to destroy this one. Sweet. Can pin that. We'll probably use it later. Refresh this. Okay, so let's do it right this time. New with options. Definitely not going with default here. We have wild. Okay. We're going to do extra. This one is just the biggest version of the container. So it has all the extra bells and whistles.
Everything in it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Everything. So much everything. All right, so we've seen the make file. Let's actually take a look at the dev container that we just grabbed. So extra, and it builds off this Docker file. We'll use that in a little bit to add the Azure CLI. But by default, it's just grabbing the container and running. And then in here, this is how we actually tell it. It's a relative path to the dev container.json that you select. So it builds off of that container. We're calling it extra. We're setting our username. We're using privileged because we actually do some Docker and Docker stuff with this sometimes, so that if you want to run like kind Kubernetes or something like that, you can do that. I have a Pulumi kind Kubernetes provider dropping very soon.
Nice.
So that's great when you're just trying to test stuff really fast and you don't want to wait for the cloud to spin up resources. And then it's good for promotion, so you can kind of do local dev. And then once it passes, then you push it out to the cloud. That's how we actually enable the Docker feature. There's other features that you can get that are pretty great. We might actually use a feature. Let's take a look and see if we have an Azure CLI feature. No, where's the feature library? Yes, Azure CLI. So let's use that to actually load our Azure CLI in the container. We can use the Docker file if we have anything else that we want that this doesn't load. But
so it looks like it's like building out your workbench, right?
Yeah, we're grabbing all the tools that we want in our tool belt and just kind of setting everything out that we're going to use for our project. And now, all right. There we go. Now we actually have the container like we want it. There we go. So, audience, you can see what not to do.
Well, that was an easy one to miss, right? Like I would have just clicked on next. So now
that tells me that I actually need to go and probably tweak something in the dev container repository to make sure that if people do just click, they at least get something useful.
Right.
So let's go ahead and start with our dev container file. We're going to our extra here. And to make it default, let's move those files to the top level. And we're going to do...
Is this where you add that Azure CLI?
Yeah. Sweet. And I cannot work without Vim. So, no, I'm in the browser, so I forgot the Vim plugin doesn't work. I'm really going to suffer today. Y'all are going to watch me do weird things with the keyboard trying to muscle memory things through. All right, so we're going to do rebuild. And that will pull in the feature for Azure CLI. If we want to actually watch it building, usually it shows us the option to look at logs. Let me get a drink real quick.
It's hypnotic, right?
So peaceful just watching it go and grab the Azure CLI, so I don't actually have to think about it. What do you usually use for your development? It's like you're all Azure all the time, so probably your local system is pretty tuned in, dialed in for that.
Yeah, I recently just got a Mac because I'm a Unix guy, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
but I needed Office. You can't get Office on Linux, right? So
Yeah. Office 365.
Exactly, right? So yeah, thanks for clarifying that. But I use VS Code. I used to use Windows Subsystem for Linux, right? I would build all my containers in there, right, for my development and everything else. But now that I'm on Mac OS, it's shifted more to the cloud, right? So it's more
Yep.
GitHub code spaces, right, and all that good stuff. I've
Yeah.
got a local Kubernetes cluster as well, on an Intel NUC, and I do my development on there as well. So I am an infrastructure guy. Like,
Yep.
I need to see physical hardware in front of me, right? So
Yeah, no, I have 3 optiplexes on the back side of this desk right now. That way I can be root on all of the things, because what's the point if you're not root?
Exactly, right? And it also makes me feel sort of happy because the damage is localized to that blast radius on that physical piece of hardware, right?
Yes. So I use Talos Linux on my local systems,
We've
and
seen this, right?
yeah, they have that reset API. So it's like, I'm done. This is destroyed. I don't want to fix it. Reset. Yeah.
That's what we aim for, right? There's no point
Yes.
troubleshooting when you can just rebuild.
That is life. All right. So we have our Azure CLI,
Awesome.
and that was pretty easy. Now we don't have to think about that ever again. So I'm going to take a look here at, this is the dev container. It has Nix inside, so we can do like dir env to like set very specific things. So we don't need Talos stuff here. I have some Pulumi stuff set. We can do like a skip version check so it doesn't tell me when my CLI is out of version, because with the dev container, you end up just managing versions and things that way. If you're doing like local login with CLI, that actually works pretty great. One thing that I'm going to do is jump into my settings and code spaces, and I want to add there it is. Okay, so that adds this secret, this Pulumi access token, to the dev container, and of course,
it's good to see you got MFA.
Yeah, so interruptive, because I always look at my phone when I need MFA, and then I forget 30 minutes later why I picked up my phone, and I still have to MFA.
It's expired, and you have to hit
it
again, right?
It's like, oh no, I failed again. Why? Yeah. All right, so we can reload real quick, and it grabs our API token, and then we'll do Pulumi login instead of like using the local. So you can use local state if you want to, and then these environment variables kind of configure all that. Local state is okay for development. It's not even the easiest for troubleshooting, in my opinion, because there are some cloud features that are pretty useful.
So how does Pulumi handle state?
Yeah, so we have the default is to use Pulumi Cloud. So Pulumi login, it picks up that Pulumi access token that we just gave access to in this repository. And now I'm logged into the cloud. So if I want to, for example, I can take a look at all of the different stacks and things like that we have deployed. So in the cloud, we have like projects. So for example, cargo is a thing. It's not Acuity cargo, that's Containercraft cargo. It's Kubevert project. We have like different projects named off of, by default, it either picks up the Git repository name, or it picks up the name that we're actually going to set when we do Pulumi new. So let's walk through that real quick. And we're going to do, we have to use the force flag since we're using a template Git repo and it already has some artifacts on there. Do we want to be super crazy and do Pulumi AI and just see if it works?
To you.
All right, let's play with it. Pulumi AI usually with pretty like standard requests gets you about 95% of the way there, and then you might have to like tweak some things just to get it to work. Sometimes it actually works on the first try, so we'll see if that works. When you start getting into longer prompts, the amount of benefit on the first try that you get kind of dwindles a little bit. But the team has been awesome at accelerating the quality there. So we're going to choose Python, and we're going to say we need to. Okay. Actually, you are more practiced at Azure than I am. If I was writing like an AWS prompt for EKS, I'd probably be a little bit more fine-tuned on the first try. So why don't you tell me all the things that kind of off the top of your head we need for AKS to be functional out of the box, and I'll write it down.
Oh, okay. So you're testing me now. So we need a resource group. Start from the top, right? For our resource to be in there. We need AKS cluster. I'm going to say for development, right? Because we have production templates as well, right? Which ups the cost considerably, as you can probably imagine, right?
Okay.
Which region do you want to deploy it into?
What is on the West Coast, US?
Just put West US 2. That's the region. That'll be a good region for us to deploy to. And we also want it to be, you've got to specify that it's got to be a Linux cluster. Because obviously we do Windows containers as well.
Okay, so actually I want to talk about that for a second. When I was working at Red Hat, we had support for mixed clusters where we had Linux worker nodes and Windows worker nodes. In Azure, do you do mixed clusters? Is that best practice, or do you like to kind of separate?
Because of the way that the operating system's deployed in the cluster, right? The host, it's when you're building that cluster for the first time, right? You specify which operating system architecture you want to go down. Okay. So you either choose Linux or you choose Windows, right? Because effectively they're virtual machines that we've packaged together in a format, right? To present an AKS cluster.
Okay.
What else?
Do we need like any kind of like I always jump to like we need a application gateway or something like that. I don't know.
You can deploy it with Nginx, right? So you can say deploy it with an Nginx gateway. You also want it to whitelist the IP address that you're calling from, because by default it'll block all network traffic for us to be able to.
I was typing. Can you repeat that?
I'm moving too fast. We also wanted to whitelist the IP address of your home IP, so you're able to kubectl, right, or kubectl to it. But because you're running this from a dev container, it may pick up the IP address from the GitHub location. So maybe we'll just do that manually in the portal afterwards. That'll be a quick fix. Right?
Okay. We'll explore that. Yeah. All right. This is a pretty long prompt, so let's see if it picks it up or not.
It's pretty complex, right?
So it does take a second. So actually, I can tell you a little bit about Pulumi AI. Let's jump. So that was the CLI version. We're also working on a Copilot. Yeah, we're definitely, yeah. So we have a Copilot we're working on to see if that's like practical and beneficial. But kind of the easiest way to get started with Pulumi AI is to just drop in here and be like,
do you know what? This is like platform engineering.
It is.
Because as a developer, I don't care what's deployed. It's, can I run my code, right? Is it the right platform and architecture for my app, right? At the end of the day.
So like you can just show up, and you can like ask for it to explain a lot and give you highly verbose human language to explain what's happening.
Nice.
You can say, just give me the code. I don't want anything else. That's usually what I jump to, because I after a few tries, you start feeling a little bit patronized by ChatGPT in the background. But this system is built by our amazing Aaron Friel and his team. And they like Amy is on their team as well, and she's like data scientist and like knows how to do really cool stuff like
Rock stars,
cluster
right?
analysis. The data science gets really interesting. But ultimately they are looking to make a chatbot that is as accurate and powerful with Pulumi code specifically as possible. So ChatGPT, if you just go and you're like, hey, vanilla ChatGPT, write some Pulumi code, it gets a lot of things right as far as like, say, Python syntax, if that's the language you're using, and can do like several other good Pulumi practice recommendations when it comes to like using Pulumi CLI to define config variables, stuff like that. But it tends to really lag the Pulumi registry, where we keep.
So Pulumi's got a registry, right? Like all the other DSLs out there.
Yeah.
Right?
So this is the provider registry for all of the different cloud services that we support. And ChatGPT is trained on the general internet, which means it doesn't really pick up the latest versions and things like that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have, it's a probability engine, right? So how do you actually convince it to use real Pulumi packages instead of just generic, say, Bodo 3 for AWS or something like that, right? And it'll get that right sometimes, and sometimes it'll just hallucinate, I think this is a Pulumi package, or with Golang, it's especially bad at getting the versions right for the packages. Right. And so we use a vector database with all of our docs and provider resources as vector embedded content that ChatGPT gets to retrieve as part of the prompt generation that the AI chatbot assembles to send to ChatGPT. So it can say, hey, look, it looks like the prompt is asking for an AKS cluster. So we need to make sure that we actually get like, we import the right package, and then we do, the right type of resource, because sometimes it might like hallucinate these strings and stuff like that without the augmentation of that retrieval database. So
yeah, I've experienced that myself, right? Because the data is, I don't know, it's like 18 months, right? Something like that, right? For ChatGPT. Whereas you're targeting, go and look at this data source and learn, right, from our registry, right? So it's more accurate, right? I like that a lot.
Yep. Okay, so it looks like we're going to have a little thing to probably debug here, but our prompt was asking for AKS. I asked for Pulumi config for setting the region. So you can see here, it's actually loading the config, and it created our AKS. It has a rule in there. We'll see if it's accurate for whitelisting an IP address.
It's allowed. It's allowed all IP addresses.
Hey, we're doing dev here, okay? This is not prod.
I'm part of my CISO hat. Just keeps creeping in, right, Kat? Sorry.
I do all pre-prod work almost exclusively. Like I've dabbled in a little bit of day 2 ops and debugging after I threw it over the wall and said, "Hey, use this," right? But I typically work with like root everywhere, and security is wide open because ain't nobody got time for that.
That's why I've got a job, Kat. That's why I've got a job.
I'm sharing. Sharing is caring, right? No, I'd actually really like to do an individual. Yeah, I'd like to do an individual contributor like stint for a while to get like to build Greenfield and get it all the way into production and then run it for a little while, because I know I'm lacking that experiences. I bolt things together a lot, but I don't treat it like a pet very often. Yeah, if you actually wanted to take this CLI and be like, okay, that wasn't real, you hallucinated, you could continue to update it from here. But we're just going to go ahead and run what we see happening after it creates the code boilerplate is it creates a Pulumi stack.
Nice.
So let's take a look at what all the AI dropped. So all these green files are new in the repo. So what happened? Okay, so our project name is Pulumi Azure AI. It picked that up from the name of the repo itself. We're informing Pulumi that we're using Python. By default, we pretty much always recommend use a virtual environment here. So as we install our Python pip packages, they aren't messing up anything on the host. We're in a dev container, so we could be a little bit more lenient there and not get overburdened with virtual, but we're gonna just use defaults. And then I have absolutely no idea what that is. I have not seen that before. That is super cool. Is that
it's actually compressed
that's
the template,
so cool.
Packaged
Okay.
it for you, right? That's
I'm
awesome.
gonna have to explore that later.
Like, and by the way, here's a template you used if you want to use it again.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I wonder if that's a new feature. They've been rolling out features crazy fast. Okay, so then we have our requirements.txt, and it looks like we might have to. This part here might be hallucinated, but we'll see. So Pulumi, that's going to be imported in every program you write. Since we're in Azure, we're importing Pulumi Azure Native in the registry, and we're going to refer to this documentation. So we may as well open it now. But you can jump in here, and you kind of get an idea, like basic docs. Over here is where we're going to spend most of our time. So let's take a look. If we want to say, hey, is this container service thing a real thing? I'm guessing it's actually an Azure resource. Yeah, so we're not going to have that in requirements. But we can go in and say, okay, what all can we build from that resource? So let's delete that and save our file. And now we're going to do, we can either do pip install requirements manually like that, or we'll do it in just a second. Yay, no errors. That's what we're looking for.
That's what you like, right?
Yeah, preferably. Yeah, so I mean, again, the chatbot thing is still working out how to write higher quality code the first time, but it was airing out installing dependencies from that container service line that shouldn't have been in requirements.
But like you said, like if something even gets me 70% the way there, I'm happy, right?
Yeah,
like,
it really takes the fatigue off of trying to imagine like what belongs where, how do I get close so that then I can start doing the real work, which is like refining and optimizing and enhancing, not just the 101 getting started, right?
I was speaking with a colleague yesterday. We spend most of our time trying to reverse engineer Azure resources into infrastructure as a code, right? To understand all the components and dependencies that make it up, right? Like part of the stack. Whereas with this, it's like, well, it also tells you what good looks like as well, right? That's what I'm.
It does. So it gives you usually it drops a pretty solid baseline, and then you can compare that to other similar projects and just see like, okay, was this sane, or should it actually not be open to the world? All IP addresses, because that bothers some people apparently. All right. So the other way to install dependencies is
You're not gonna let me forget that, right?
No good deed goes unpunished. So Pulumi also has the Pulumi install command for installing dependencies. That's usually the best one, since it sometimes will resolve that, it needs some other Pulumi dependencies. We're going to grab those real quick.
Awesome.
And
I'm loving this. This is awesome, by the way.
Yeah, so
process.
I originally despised Python, and that's because I come from a enterprise Linux support background, doing OpenStack, which is a lot of Python. And I only ever saw things come across my desk when they were broken, right?
The bad side, right? Of
So
not creating, but fixing, right?
As an introduction to Python, that's the worst possible first impression, because everything's already broken by the time I see it. And then I'm having to work on Python, not Linux. And I came to just despise that. Then I joined Pulumi, and I was like, during interviews, hey, look, I'll write Golang, I'll write TypeScript. I might even dabble in some of the other weird ones, but I don't want to write Python. 3 hours in on my first day, Pulumi was supportive of this plan. So awesome company, by the way. But 3 hours in, I joined my first meeting just because I don't have anything on my schedule, and I'm like, I'll just listen into whatever's going on. And then the discussion came up, maybe we should investigate and think about planning the AI type content that we'll probably have to do since ChatGPT is happening now. And I was like, I have nothing on my plate, so why don't I go ahead and take that and run with it? It took me another 2 hours to realize I just obligated myself to Python for the next 2 years. Because Python is like everywhere in AI now.
It is. I had a guy on a few weeks back, and that was his workbench, right? He was doing RAG, and he was like Python, right, for everything.
Oh yeah. Yep. Okay, so I am not going to be very happy in the code without my Vim plugin. So I'm going to actually close this and jump back to code spaces. And I am going to open in Visual Studio Code. And then I'll change windows real quick.
So you're not a fan of Nano, no?
Nano. I put the no in Nano. I'm sorry.
I was clickbaiting you there. I apologize.
All right, so let me share.
I know a lot of developers, right, that use Vim.
Yeah, so I was Vim all the time. I mean, from the support world, right? You want to use...
Red Hat uses Vim, right, from memory. Like, it's part of the stack. I mean, you can use Nano, right, but like...
I mean, Vim is I gotta find the right window. Why did I do this to myself? Let me dev container. Come on, I can find you. I can find you.
And for those folks that don't know what we're talking about, Vim is a text editor, right? But it's used as an IDE as well.
Yeah. So actually, I can show you real quick. So VI and Vim are everywhere, like Kevin said. And the reason that's useful to get you comfortable with in support roles is because you have to SSH out to all kinds of servers, and you want to be comfortable with what's available. And so learning VI and Vim at that point was really beneficial in those roles. And now it's muscle memory, and I can't let go. Like, just the number of times I'm in a Word doc or like Google Doc or whatever, and I try to use Vim key bindings to get around is embarrassing, because so many characters just land in a PowerPoint or something like that, and people are like, what is JK in here for? And I'm like, I'm not just kidding, I promise. But it's just key bindings for Vim. Okay, so we're not actually going to do Vim in VS Code right now, even though I do that a lot. But this is the code that we have to work with right now. So we have our Pulumi config, and we can do something like, we're going to list our stack because configs are set per stack. So our project is Pulumi Azure AI. Our stack is dev. We can create additional stacks like test and prod or east and west or things like that over time. And then we can do Pulumi config just to see what configs we have. And at the moment, we just have tags, which are interestingly tagged with our. We're going to change that now that I know what it's actually trying to do with that line in the Pulumi config. But we're going to Pulumi config set. Do we actually have it picking up our region? No, we don't. So we're going to actually have to, yes, we do, require resource group name. I don't want to do resource group name. I want to do region. AI, you're letting me down. Let's do this. We're going to do resource group name is, what is code to cloud? That works. And now when we do Pulumi config, you can see we've added a new value.
Right, okay.
And so when we're actually in the IAC itself, we can do something like, you'll always initialize the config. And then here we're doing config require. You can also do config get and then do or to provide like a same default if you want to do like that. Like we're in a regular programming language. So if we want to invite or import any generic Python package and use that as logic in our program, we can just do that. The same for like if we want to just we're going to enable that. And let's have fun. Yes, Copilot is enabled. So let's write a comment. There we go. And now, what? Okay. And we're going to jump in here and we're just going to, there we go. So now we're handling that a little bit more reasonably, and we can use that code to cloud string as a variable across all kinds of things. And that'll populate out. So we have a resource group. Can you tell us about a resource group and what it is?
So a resource group is basically a logical container for your infrastructure resources to land in, right? It's metadata at the end of the day, but it's an anchor point for your resources to be pointed to.
So this is how we actually set defaults. So we're going to switch this hard-coded string to AZ region. And this is one reason I wanted to go ahead and like use VS Code, use code spaces, enable code completions with Copilot, because it's really scary to take on a programming language if all of the onus is on your brain to get it right all the time. But it's a lot less scary, hopefully, now showing how I didn't even write the code really for this. I just wrote the, hey, I want to set a variable to the value of something, right? And then it was like, yeah, write the code like that. And it's accurate a lot of times for these types of things where you're like, how do I write a variable? Or how do I make it a conditional where it's like, let's do another one. So for example, our instance count. So let's do what is this actually called? So like, is that called an instance count, a node count?
It is an instance count, right? So like 1 or 2 node tools, basically. So typically you'd have one for the system and then one for the application.
Right? Okay. So let's actually take a look. It looks like we are only...
We're doing a dev one, right?
Yeah, so we just have one for now.
It's just one, right? So like if you're doing development, then yeah, shared access resources is not about it.
Yeah, so if we want to default to one, all right, so this is actually important. So require is and get are expecting strings. You can see like your code spaces is going to tell you the type here, or your VS Code will, when you hover over it. So that can be really helpful. And we want to default to 1. So let's go ahead and just let that default. But you'll notice this is not getString, right? This is expecting an integer. So in programming parlance, an integer is, any non-float. So like 1 is an integer, 1.5 is a float. So whole numbers we're looking for. So anything from 1 to 99, so long as it's not, fractional. And then let's take a look in here, and you can call out if you see anything that maybe is a little odd or might.
Looking at it, no, so far so good. It's pretty default out the box, right?
Yeah.
But the DNS prefix is our local. I don't know, like code2cloud.local, right, or whatever you want to call it. So
let's actually. So we're gonna use another regular Python thing here, and I want to say set name to and the value of, we don't want it to change based on instance count, because then we'd be destroying a lot of things every time we change our instance count. But we do want to use RG name. So now we have, let's see if we can get, there we go. Yeah, see this F string thing is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Where you're just concatenating, say, agent pool and resource group name. Now, I don't like how it suggested formatting this, so we're going to change that. And now we have our name for our agent pool. And I don't know if you can hear the kitty in the background.
I was just saying, is that a cat, right? That's all.
It's a pretty kitty. It's a pretty kitty. Yeah, she'll jump up in a minute and interrupt.
It's happened before. We've had dogs as well, right?
Yeah. I don't have dogs right now. It makes me so sad. No. Kitty. Okay, so Kitty just did what she does and jumped on the keyboard. Why, Kitty? Why must you do this to me?
Even the cat's a developer. I love it.
I know. The get ups, Kitty. Okay. So we're gonna Control C. Oh wait, Kitty, you went into a Python interpreter. Kitty likes snakes, I guess, huh? All right. So we also are setting up a kube config, and then we use this to we export it. So if for some reason we want to build other Pulumi projects and consume this cluster, there are other more advanced ways of passing around credentials and things like that. We can possibly get into that in the future, but really rudimentary is just using the kube config to actually hit the API and use that for auth. So we're going to use that for now. We have our, what is this though? This is part of what it was hallucinating in the requirements.
So it's producing a load balancer, and I've got a funny feeling that it's trying to deploy either a standard load balancer or an application gateway, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure I really like what it's doing there right now.
Yeah, it's a standard load balancer that it's trying to front the cluster with.
So let's comment that out for the time being.
Probably don't need that, right? Like you can just use Nginx, right?
That's an option too. All right, so when we're actually ready to run the program, what are we doing first? Pulumi Preview is something that I run just to see if the code actually will run, because it might complain about different lines. So it's right now, it's saying that we need to authenticate, right? So let's actually do that next. Is this an AZ auth login, or is this like, what is the AZ?
It should pop a web. It should pop a web browser up, right, for you to log into your Azure subscription. Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't remember if this was the SSO login.
It's just AZ login. So AZ space login. Right.
There we go. And yes, I have a browser, so I am going to just hop through Pulumi sign in real quick.
I love the fact that it checks that though. I haven't seen that on other tools.
Oh,
So.
yeah. Well, it's definitely going to freak out if we don't have credentials, because that's how it authenticates against the Azure API. So now we have our credentials, and I really like credentials this way. Like, passing around tokens and stuff like that is not my favorite. We're going to do Pulumi Preview again. And so now it's going to complain about some syntax. So probably what's happening is this was hallucinated. So let's go take a look at line 39. So the error codes are usually really, really helpful. And it's saying this managed cluster SKU is not a real thing. So
no, let me get the SKUs up.
Let me actually, this is when I jump into the Pulumi Docs. So let's do, and this is why I like trying to do VS Code in the browser, because I can, when I'm showing on camera and screen sharing, I can hop between pages. But we're gonna jump into.
I'm just looking for the.
What? The simple browser is not working. That's silly. Usually it does. Okay, let me jump over and see what our docs say about that resource. I want to share screen for this though. So I'm going to stop. And you tell me how much time we have left, because we might be.
So we've got a couple minutes left.
Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing and switch to browser again. We're going to go to there we go. Okay. Azure package. So now what we can do is say if we're questioning whether that's a real resource, just copy pasted it, and it's like, no, that's not a real thing.
No,
right?
I'm looking here and I'm struggling to find it, but I was just wondering.
So let's search for SKU and see if that's actually something we need. And this is when like the AI can sometimes. All right, so it actually did not.
Optional, right? That's what I'm getting here. So
okay. Let's take a look at this. Our prompt might have actually been better on this piece of code. And I did get it to actually give us an Nginx deployment. So let's try this one. And we don't have anything else like super important in the code base. So we're going to switch to share VS Code, and then we're probably going to be done bouncing around for a bit. Window is going to be Pulumi Azure. All right. So let's just be crazy and drop in. Yeah, I don't want to do all that. So let's compare the AKS cluster definition from this prompt to the other one and see what we're going to keep. Another more programmatic way, if you wanted to not fiddle with the AI stuff, is just to use the templates, and you can be like Azure.
Yeah.
And let's see, we got, I want to do Azure. Let's do AKS. Do we have Azure in here? AWS, Azure, Kubernetes, Azure, Python. Right. And then it's going to drop your templates in here, including a bunch of cool stuff. Okay, I like this. I don't think I've done Pulumi new with an Azure template before.
First time for everything, right?
Yeah.
I'm loving all the different ways, though.
Yeah. So, like another way to go if you want a more concrete prompt for your AI is to do something like this and then copy paste the code from the template into Pulumi AI and be like, hey, this is my boilerplate. Can you add an Nginx deployment to it or something like that? And then like it'll pick up and run that way. What's your favorite beverage?
Beverage? I'm going to be really stereotypical. It's tea.
Oh, okay. Ooh, I really like this template.
What's your favorite beverage? You're back on the caffeine, right?
You saw my Twitter confession, didn't you?
I'm back on the caffeine.
Yeah, okay.
That's the hard stuff for today, right?
Yeah, right now, actually, I'm drinking water with like the Mio flavor stuff. So probably very cancer-causing. I appreciate the credit for being healthy, but got to have my artificial flavors, apparently. But it's not the caffeinated ones. So
okay.
I had 1 cup of coffee today. I'm actually being halfway responsible. Let's actually go and do this. We're gonna workspaces, Pulumi, main. Yeah, this is me just like totally not caring about way too many correct ways of doing things. All right, so let's see. Yeah, we have the template that we're working from now.
Right.
So you can see how the author of the template set up worker nodes, Kubernetes version. What is the current latest version?
I'm going to say 129, right? Off the top of
my
head.
On AKS?
Yes.
Oh, are you already? I would have thought it was like stuck at like .29 or something like that.
Let me double check. Bear with me, caller. Yeah, 129.1 or .2.
Ooh, okay. Let's live on the edge.
Oh, actually 130, right? We're on 130 now.
Yep. So, one thing that I would not put into production is all of these variables hard coded.
You variabilize them, right?
Because yeah. So I mean, there are some things like you might say, if you're the platform owner, you hard code something like this, like the node size or something like that, if you're only going to allow access to certain node types. Or you might create an array of different approved node types. And then in Pulumi config, they select from the array that you've hard coded. If you have like other teams consuming your IAC. But we're going to actually have to set up a SSH pub key. And that's the resource group. We have
virtual network.
Yep. All right. So this is a much more mature template. I really like that. Not all of the templates are as mature as this one. So
there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to AKS.
Yeah. So we have 3 different subnets, and those are for our different availability zones in our region, I'm guessing.
Yeah, or to separate like node pools, that kind of thing. But yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah, no, I'm going to learn some Azure stuff through this project with you, probably. Yeah, here's where we're actually setting our availability zones. This is something I would probably parameterize because you're going to need that for other resources in the cluster from time to time.
And also, it's region specific, right? So
Oh,
if you're deploying in New Zealand, I'm just making something up, right? It might not be as mature as West Europe, right?
okay.
Which is
So
a
this
bigger
is,
data center, right?
yeah, this is another reason I really like Python, or regular programming language for IC. So if you have a set of different like node types and availability zones and maybe some other things that are unique to each region, you could set up like a dictionary of how all of those things line up together. And that way in the Pulumi config, you set the region, and then your IAC is going to pick up the dictionary of the variables associated with that region that you're deploying to, and it keeps it all in check. And then if you actually need to change something specific to that region, you go into the dictionary, and then you just like change it in one place, and it populates all out in the rest of your code, assuming you utilize the dictionary when you're writing other resources. For non-developers, the dictionary, it's let's actually just write one real fast. Wait. Oh my gosh, it is hilarious. It's just like, I'm going to talk about this all day. Copilot's funny like that, isn't it? Okay, so Copilot's not going to write this code. That's fine. We're going to delete those lines, and we're going to say, and we're going to say, yeah, we can go here, and that's the type of nodes we're going to do, and those are the regions we're going to do, and now we're going to do West.
We're going to do the same, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So now if I wanted to, I could just use that to populate out. That way all I have to do is set the region, and then all of this gets set, and I can consume those as variables in the rest of my code. So that is one of the reasons I love regular programming languages for this stuff. Let's take a look and see if we can Pulumi Preview on this. As is. And if not, I have to go like fix bugs in our templates. Okay, so we need to actually set our Pulumi configs.
Management group ID. I'm wondering why it needs that.
So this is probably just how the code or the developer for this template likes to arrange things. I'm guessing that's just going to be like a tag or something like that. But let's actually take a look and see where it comes from. Management group ID. And okay, so that comes from this key in Pulumi config, and then it maps to this variable. So let's follow that around. We're using it here for an Azure AD
profile, right?
Yeah.
Just for a dev, I don't think you'd need it, to be quite honest.
And that could be like very true. And we're doing more verbosity than sane defaults. But at least like anyone using this template is gonna run into the same thing. So let's see what other things we need to do. SSH pub key. So I'm gonna actually grab my real public key here. I'm just gonna grab the first one. All right. Let's see if there's any other requires. So, nope, just those two.
Okay.
So let's see if we can preview now. Sweet. All right. So I'm actually going to say, unless we actually want to deploy, that would take a little while to actually stand all this up. So do you want to call it for today? And then on the next episode, we actually deploy and start adding resources to our cluster?
It's a great cliffhanger, right?
Cool.
At the end of the day.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, I've loved everything that we've done so far, right?
I hope so.
Absolute mixture of tools out there, right? Like, code spaces, we got GitHub, everything, right?
Yeah, let's recap what we did.
Go for
So
it.
we did not start prepared for anything that we showed today. We are on the fly. We created a new repository just to get kind of a head start. We wanted to use the Pulumi dev container, so we didn't have to worry about like how to install things. We added the feature for Azure CLI to our dev container and reloaded so that it would pick up the new feature. We did a Pulumi login after adding our GitHub stored token for Pulumi Cloud. And then we did our Azure CLI login.
That's right.
We played with Pulumi AI for a little bit. It's neat. It's interesting. It does give some decent stuff. You have to practice your prompts. I'm a little more practiced with my AWS prompts, so I know how to cover asking the question the right way to get useful code a little bit better there. And I'm sure there's some unique tricks for something like Azure for the same, like getting the prompt to generate the right output type tricks. So we opted instead to just drop into Pulumi templates and get a more proven template to start from as our boilerplate. We walked through what it takes to actually install the Pulumi packages with Python. And then we walked through some examples of how to set variables, how to create a dictionary, how to use some of the features in code spaces and VS Code, including like Copilot to help write the code in case you want to kind of relieve some of the mental burden if you're new to programming. And we learned some things about the AKS Kubernetes stack for different keys and values that are required. And I am super excited for our next episode because I really feel like we get to go deeper into the Azure side.
Yes.
Instead of the Pulumi stuff that I'm living and breathing all day. So
that was absolutely fantastic, Kat. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks.
I've learned a lot, right? That's why I bring people on the show as well. Like,
are you inspired to write Pulumi though?
I am inspired.
Yes.
I'm inspired to use the other tools as well, right? That you've got going there, because if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
Right. It's good to always see someone else's stack, set up, their approach. Right. It's always good for the brain. Right. So again, just amazing. But yeah, looking forward to the next session.
Me too.
We're gonna get that booked in. We may even go live with it. Right.
I would love to do a live stream. Absolutely. I mean,
it's probably gonna go live then.
If you're up, if you can handle the pressure. I will make a fool of myself on camera. I can do that.
We can both look like fools, right?
All right.
So we'll probably go live with the next one. I'll get that out there, right, in the socials.
Okay.
Again, links to the resources that Kat used today, I will grab up Kat. We'll publish it in the show notes, everywhere else. So if you like what you've seen, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and repeat.
Yes.
And on that note, we're going to call it a day.
See you later. Thanks, Kevin.
Goodbye for now.
Yeah.